I've been fortunate that I've been part of each and every event here, and it's always a pleasure to come back and speak to all of you. So, can we have the presentation, please? So I'll tell you a bit about, when I was asked, I saw the theme of the conference, of course, and then I was asked about the title of the presentation, which would obviously take care of the theme of the conference. And then I thought of naming it Right Place, Right Time. There is a reason for this. And also let me first clarify that whenever somebody says that you are right place, right time, the first thing that people think that, oh, I'm lucky. So, in the first few slides of my presentation, I want to first clarify what do I mean by being at the right place at the right time, right? So I'm going to shoot, few very, very simple, very, very elementary questions at all of you. Try to speak out loud, and since these questions are extremely difficult, I've also put a hint at the bottom. So the first question is, who is the most successful and famous investor in the world? It's Mr. Buffett. Yeah. That's why I put a hint also. I hope the hint helped you. So you said Mr. Buffett. Now is the extremely difficult question. In this, I think the hint also will not help you. So I want to ask you, what is common between you and Mr. Buffett? Patience. Listen, there are 600 people here. You cannot be lying. Don't say patience is one of the common things. I don't think most of you are patient. I have dealt with you for many, many years. Look at the hint carefully. I think Dipesh, what do you want to say? एक मिनट Dipesh को बोलने दो. Can you do Chinese whispers and pass the message? I can't hear you. Oh, you are saying you are also at the right place at the right time. Okay. Long term. नहीं, उसके जितना long term कोई नहीं. आपका 90 years नहीं हुआ है. By the way, this thing about 90 years old, right? That lot of people, they say that successful investors live very, very long. I hope it's the other way around, right? You know that people who live long only can be successful investors. Correct? Yes.
Who is the common word? You is the common.
Who is common? Sorry, you.
But you is common.
So, by the way, what is common between you and Mr. Buffett? Whenever he's asked that, Mr. Buffett, what is the secret of your success? Do you know what he replies? Apart from being very successful and very intelligent, he's also a very humble man. So whenever he's asked that what is the secret of your success, he says that I was born in the USA in 1930. Because he was at the right place at the right time. He says that is the secret of his success. It's obvious, right? See. And he puts it in a technical term, biological term. He says, I won the ovarian lottery. See, you know how human beings are produced, right? You obviously know. You know that at inception, there is basically a race where a lot of particles are racing towards a target. And then eventually one of them wins and reaches the target. Correct? So first of all, the fact that you're sitting here, meaning one race long back before your birth, you already won. And there are many others who lost that race already. Second is, at a particular point in time, you were born in a particular place in a particular country. Now, till that, you had no role to play. See, what happens is, if I become CEO of a company, if I do some great business, I think, oh, I have done such great things. But the fact that I was born in 1976 in Mumbai, a lot of things got decided there only. Till then, I had no role to play. Correct? So that's why Mr. Buffett says that he won the ovarian lottery. And what it means in more practical terms, forget the biology, more practically what it means is that if Mr. Buffett was born in 1930, but in Kenya or Afghanistan, then you would not know him as Mr. Buffett. And if he was born in USA itself, but instead of 1930, he was born in 1830, He wouldn't become Mr. Buffett. You would not know him, correct? So what is common between you and him is the fact that he also says he found himself at the right place at the right time. And I'm sure you also realize with Raghav's presentation that you are at the right place at the right time, correct? I think that is something which is important. Now, the key thing which I want to ask you, but is being at the right place at the right time? See, for being in the right place at the right time, you need to be lucky. There is no debate about that. But being at the right place, right time, is it only about luck? That's the question. And I have put a hint here again. I don't know how many of you watch Hindi movies also, apart from, you watch Hindi movies? Have you watched this iconic movie called Hera Fairy? I'm not talking about Hera Fairy 2, 3, 4, 5 and all, the first one. How many of you seen it? Everybody has seen it. Do you know what Akshay Kumar told? You know, the most iconic character there was Paresh Rawal. He was called Babu Bhaiya. So there is a particular stage in the movie where Akshay Kumar is telling Paresh Rawal that if we do this, we will become fabulously wealthy and we should take that risk. So Babu Bhaiya says, no chance, I am not doing it. So what does Akshay Kumar tell Paresh Rawal about wealth? Wealth is always manifested as Lakshmi ji. That's why I've written. तो लक्ष्मी जी के बारे में अक्षय कुमार ने बाबू भैया को क्या बताया? Does anybody remember? वो क्या बोला था? How many of you know Gujarati here? Acha, you have to be a Gujarati, had to be. So I don't know, obviously I don't know Kannada, please pardon me for that. And I don't know how to say it in English or Hindi. But for those of you, I'll speak in Gujarati and then I'll explain to you. ગુજરાતી में એક કહાવત है, લક્ષ્મીજી તમને તિલક લગાવવા આવ્યા અને તમે મોઢું ધોવા ગયા હતા. You know what it means? It means that લક્ષ્મીજી आपको तिलक लगाने आई. See, what is figuratively the meaning that લક્ષ્મીજી आपको तिलक लगाने आई? What it means that લક્ષ્મીજી has come to endow you with wealth. She's going to give you an endowment, right? तो लक्ष्मीजी जब आपको तिलक लगाने आती है, तब आपको मुंह धोने नहीं जाना चाहिए. So why did I write it here? Because being in the right place at the right time, you are lucky. But it is not just about being lucky. Being at the right place at the right time, you will prove to be lucky only if you are doing the right things. So being at the right place at the right time has a big role to play. By the way, there's a very famous author called Malcolm Gladwell. And one of the books he wrote was called Outliers. How many of you read Outliers? Do you know that in the USA, maximum, you know, National Basketball Association, you follow NBA? Do you know that maximum number of basketball players in the US are born in the month of January or February? Do you know what is the reason for this? Because in India, we follow academic year from June to July to June or something like that. June to April or whatever. In the US, they follow January to December. So for every class, they are making basketball teams. Now what will happen is, in a class, the kid who is born in January will be 5 years, 11 months old. The kid who is born in December will be 5 years, 1 month old. Correct? So automatically, at 5 years of age, 11 months of age difference will mean that the kids who are born in January are slightly taller, slightly stronger, and slightly faster. So in every class selection, the one born in January is going to be the best performer. Do you know, for instance, that all the people who are the most successful technology entrepreneurs, they all were born in the 1950s, and they all studied computer science on the west coast of the US in the 60s. Whether it is Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, Larry Ellison, all of them have same or similar background. And by the way, do you know that in India also, the most successful stock market participants, you know, the biggest names that you hear about investing in the stock market in India, did you know that they all entered the stock market between 1985 and 1990? All of them. Each one of them. You see their history. Everybody entered between 1985 to 1990. Some may have entered in 91 or 92. But all the people today who are the biggest of brokers, the biggest of people with thousands of crores of wealth, they all have entered around 1990. So being in the right place at the right time has a huge role to play in how successful you can be. But don't fool yourself by thinking that people who are at the right place at the right time will get there just because they're lucky. You are in the right place at the right time, but you will have to do many, many right things. I think that is something which is important. And in our industry, what is the beauty? The beauty is that doing the right thing means what? Stay there. Stay on the pitch, right? Those who follow tennis, tennis is the only sport where they report a particular statistic which is called unforced errors. You know why they report unforced errors in tennis? In other sports, they don't report it. Because tennis is a very arduous game. So generally speaking, you keep the ball in the court, let the other guy make the mistake. In cricket, for example, they say that if there is a tough match, they say that if you 50 over khelega to jeet jayega. If you stay on the pitch, you will win. So what is the beauty about our industry? The beauty about our industry is you don't make mistakes, you will win. Just stay put. Every day come at 9 o'clock, go at 6 o'clock, don't do anything adventurous. Keep the ball in the court, stay on the pitch, take singles. Like in our company, for example, we recently did a campaign. Everybody says SIP. The more cricketing terminology or the more sports terminology of SIP is stay in play. Meaning just be on the pitch, keep the ball in the court. Because in our industry, doing the right thing is only about not making mistakes, not being adventurous. I think that is how lucky you are. Now the question is, can you stay on the pitch for a long period of time, right? Now recently, and Raghav alluded to this, the Prime Minister has been saying, and many government authorities, functionaries have been saying that the next 25 years is Amrit Kal of India. Now, what happens is that when powerful people, politicians, big businessmen, when they make some statement, the unfortunate thing is that a lot of times they are seen to be slogans. Now the question is, are these really political statements or has really our time actually come? Now, to my understanding, these are not really just political statements, correct? Why did I say they are not political statements? Because what has happened this year, the most remarkable thing which happened this year is that after a lot of effort, finally we overtook China in terms of population. बाकी सब target नहीं पता है, ये target पक्का. And unfortunately, Raghav said that they might make more mistake. Unfortunately, इसमें भी उनका ही mistake है, अपना achievement नहीं है. Because for 44 years they had one child policy. And now you cannot reverse it. Correct? So finally we overtaken China in terms of the population. And when we were kids, we were wrongly taught for the longest point in time, we were taught that population itna nahi hona chahiye, it's a disadvantage. But today the problem with the world, the problem with the world is that the richest countries in the world and the countries which contribute the maximum to the world's economy and the economic growth, unfortunately they all are aging. And aging is such a thing which you cannot reverse, correct? So whether it is China, South Korea, Taiwan, Europe, large parts of the world are becoming older and older and older. And how does that get manifested? You look at this. Now, I will ensure that I don't want to repeat what Raghav has already explained to you. So we'll just try to build further on it. But this is a very, very interesting chart. What it tells you is that there is one red line on top. You can see the red line is declining precipitously. It's declining very, very rapidly. That is the working age population of China. Then you can see that there is a sky blue line that is also declining very, very rapidly. That is the working age population in Europe. There is another gray line which is also declining, but in next 10-15 years it will stop declining, it will stabilize. That is US. And their population will stop declining and it will stabilize only because of your kids and grandkids. So they have to thank you, okay? But despite exporting so much of population, there is only one country whose working age population is not going to decline for the next 20 years. There is only one line which is going up, which is the orange line, that is India's line. Now you follow some basic arithmetic, okay? Follow some basic arithmetic that the whole world, returns, see, where do people invest? People invest where they'll make returns. And how do people make returns? They make returns only if there is growth. So forget countries and economy. Look at very, very basic elementary arithmetic. Let us say there is a company whose sales turnover is 100 crores. On that turnover of 100 crores, let us say they make 20 crore of profit. Now PE multiple of Nifty is 20 times, let us say. So you know that if a company makes 20 crore profit, the market cap with 20 multiple should be 400 crores. Now, what is the elementary arithmetic I was talking about? If a company makes 20 crore profit year on year every year, the market cap doesn't change. Because it will only be 20 multiplied by 20, 400. But in a particular year, if 100 crore turnover becomes 120 crore, and 20 crore profit becomes 25 crores, then the market cap will suddenly go from 400 crores to 500 crores. So you understand that value is created, or returns are generated, or market cap appreciates only when there is growth. So returns are made only where there is growth, and people will invest only where there are returns. Is this very, very simple to understand? So I have written a lot of English here. Now, growth is a function of population and productivity of population. Correct? How many people are there, how much they can produce. If you have good technology, good infrastructure, good telecom network, your productivity will go higher. If your tax rates are lower, productivity will go higher. All these reinvestment will go up. All these things will happen. But ultimately, it is population and productivity of population. Correct? So it stands to reason that if population declines, and more importantly, if productive population declines, then the growth will actually start declining. Now, forget this company example. You see the global example. You see the whole world. I don't know accurate numbers, and in this accuracy is not even important. So first you look at it this way, that before COVID, at the highest time, say 2019, the annual output of the world, the GDP of the whole world was approximately $90 trillion. In this, US was about $22 trillion. And pre-COVID 2019, the growth of US was 3.5%. So which means that on 90 trillion, in a good year, the GDP of the world would grow 3.5%. So on 90 trillion, the incremental output for the world would be about 2.5 trillion to 2.7 trillion. And please understand that if the world remains at 90 trillion, then how many cars are sold, how many mobile phones are sold, how many people are flying in the air, how many ships are transiting, all of those, some pluses and minuses, it would actually stagnate. So like I explained before, no returns are made if there is no growth. Now in a good year, that 90 trillion output of the world would expand by about 3.5%. So it would expand by about $2.5 to $3 trillion in a year. Now the question is, if returns are made on growth, which economy is contributing to the growth? So US was 22 trillion and they grew 3.5%, which means that incremental output 700 billion came from US. China was about 16 trillion. On 16 trillion, they grew, say, roughly 6%. So how much they added? 1 trillion. Now, out of 2.5 or 2.7 trillion, 1.7 trillion incremental output was only two countries, US and China. So now you don't need to ask anybody why they are the biggest destination for foreign direct investment and why everybody wants to invest there and why all the factories are there. No questions to be asked. But where was India? We were 2.5 trillion economy, and on 2.5 trillion, our growth was 3.7%. So what was our contribution? 100 billion. What is that 100 billion? We are 16% of the world's population, and our contribution to the world's output, incremental output, was only 3 to 4%. That's it. Now I have a question for you. This year, 2022, how much of the incremental output of the world or how much of the world's growth is being contributed by India? Does anybody know? In 2019, it was about 4%. What is it in 2022? Does anybody know? What percentage? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Kitna hai? Harish sir, सबका प्राइस आप वापस ले लो. It's more than 20%. It's 20%. नहीं रे, मेरे के लिए ताली बजा के क्या फायदा? I have not done anything. I have not contributed anything. I am only telling you the statistics. It came in the paper. The point is that how did we contribute? Because on 3.5 trillion, if you grow roughly 7%, you are going to add about 250 billion plus. But this year, the world is not growing 2.5 to 3 trillion. The world is growing about 1.5 trillion to 1.7 trillion. And it is forecasted that because of that chart which I showed to you, because of this chart which I showed to you, it is forecasted that in the foreseeable future, we will contribute 15-20% of the world's growth for a very, very long time to come. So what does it say at the bottom? India will be amongst the largest contributors to the world's growth. See, we have come out of a rut after 10 years. And by the way, growth is relevant only if it comes at scale. You know, if you are Pakistan and you grow 20%, nobody cares. Because on 275 billion, even if you grow 20%, you will add 60 billion to the world. And we are adding more than one Pakistan every year already. So it's not going to add up, correct? If you are a sub-Saharan country, which is 20 billion economy and you grow 100% every year, you will not move the needle for any global corporate or for any investor. So growth is material if it comes at scale. So what is important is that India will be amongst the largest contributors to the world's growth. It will be the biggest consumer market, one of the biggest labor markets, and definitely the highest growth investment destination for next many, many years to come. This doesn't mean that next quarter stock market cannot fall. Let me clarify that. Okay. Now, what is most important is at a micro level, what does it do? You know, this whole per capita income is like a video game. Why did I say it's like a video game? Because when you were younger, have you played these video games like Prince of Persia? You played? So in these video games, what happens actually is that as you play more and more, as you get more practice, you know, as you cross certain levels, more tools and weapons open up. You know that, right? Tejas, you must have played. You are younger, so that's why I'm assuming. Younger and richer, so I'm assuming that you must have played. So the point is that as you cross more levels, you get more tools and weapons which open up. The game becomes faster, game becomes more challenging, but you get more tools and weapons which open up. So this per capita business is exactly like that. As per capita income rises, more and more sectors become salient. More and more sectors become more material. You know, when I was working, Raghav was my boss in late 90s. He will remember in ICICI, we launched a fund. It was called FMCG fund. Nowadays, do you find any FMCG fund? And by the way, he will recall, I also know that fund used to struggle to buy 5 companies because it had only HUL, ITC, Marico, Dabur, and the 5th one I don't remember. Must be ITC, of course. Right? Do you call, what is that sector called now? Do you have anything called FMCG sector? Have you opened mutual fund fact sheet? Is that sector called FMCG? It is called consumer. It is even more complicated. Consumer is called consumer staples and consumer discretionary. Consumer discretionary has got white goods, apparels, footwear, beauty products, travel and leisure, and consumer staples has got food and biscuits and whatnot, soap and shampoo, everything, ice creams, right? Why do you think that all these consumer discretionary companies are getting listed now? Why do you think, you know, private sector insurance is there for 25 years. Why do you think the first insurance company got listed only 3 years back? It is inextricably linked to how your per capita income is rising and how your savings, investment and surpluses are actually rising, correct? So you will find that in the next 10 to 15 years, non-lending financials, everything to do with saving, investing, and everything to do with discretionary consumption, you will find that they will become the biggest sectors. Which is the biggest listed sector in our stock market? Which is the biggest listed sector in our stock market? It's financials. Which is the biggest listed sector in China's stock market? It is consumer discretionary. Right? So the point is that, And you know, the good part is we are not the first country to traverse this journey. Many countries have traversed this journey. We are just following that path. But the beauty is we are following that path at a gigantic scale. And the interesting thing is we don't need to wait forever, because even within India there are many states which have already crossed. So you're in Karnataka, of course. It's $4,000 per capita income. That $4,000 per capita income is comparable to Indonesia and Philippines. We have states like Gujarat, Maharashtra and all which are at $3,500 per capita income. That is comparable to Vietnam. But the beauty is, Vietnam doesn't have 22 crore people. We have 22 crore people with $3,500 to $4,000 per capita income, right? That's why I said it's going to be the biggest consumer market, biggest labor market, and the biggest high growth investment destination. Now, what are the challenges? I said that you are at the right place at the right time, but you have to do the right things. And Raghav did briefly allude to technology. I think one of the things which people always keep thinking, that because fintechs are coming, because technology is coming, are we going to be challenged? Is it a matter of concern? Let me just tell you, 15, 20 years back, there were either foreign banks or there were MFDs who were doing mutual fund distribution. The first time private sector banks and PSU banks came into distribution, all our MFD friends used to say that, okay, now clients will transact with the banks and we will lose business. But what have all these banks actually done? They only created customers for you, right? Now, what is this technology and what are all these fintech players actually going to do? Look at it, it's resulting in big capital market adoption and mutual fund adoption. But please don't forget that how you acquire customers and how you do distribution of product is not the biggest differentiator in any business. The biggest differentiator in any business is what product you give, what advice you give, what service you give, and how sustainable is your differentiation that you create. See, just because I acquire a customer on the app, and just because I give electronic transaction, that everybody can give, that is not the biggest differentiator. The biggest differentiator is how you engage after you acquire the customer. That is the important thing. So the point is that if there are investors, obviously all of them are not acquired by you, but obviously all of them are in your target segment. So your play field is becoming richer and richer, and the market is expanding dramatically. That is the same thing which happened when banks entered distribution. When banks entered distribution, it's not that the MFD's AUM or MFD's targetable audience came down. The MFD's targetable audience actually went up, correct? So technology is not really a threat. It is only a question that what opportunities it opens up and how are you going to prepare yourself to be in the same space. The second thing is that, like I mentioned, everything to do with savings and investment in the next 20 years is going to explode. So your addressable market is only going to go up and up. Like Raghav said, if I was in your place, I would expand the whole product offering. In fact, I'll go one step further. People who are in mutual fund distribution, they always think that they should not do equity. But please understand one thing, that was relevant advice 5 years back. Today, as many number of people who enter capital market through mutual funds, there are more number of people who enter capital market through direct equity investing. So you should not, you cannot keep preaching to people. You have to somewhere walk halfway and meet them where they are comfortable. So not only mutual funds, PMS, AIF, bonds and all, I would say expand your product offering, learn about direct equity, don't do trading, don't do FNO, but at least learn to buy good stocks. Because the wider your product bouquet, the more the number of capital market participants you will be able to engage. Eventually you can coach them and tell them that, boss, this day-to-day buying stocks is not your job. Ultimately they all may reach mutual funds. See, the point is there are many people who learn after going through a journey. Now the question is, do you want to capture them after they have learned, or do you want to walk along with them in their journey? That's the only question that you need to keep in mind. So definitely widen your whole product bouquet. The second thing, a lot of times in MFD's conversations, I hear about passives. Now, 2 or 3 things I want to share here. I have myself played a role in creating a lot of passive products. All of that was for simplicity and convenience. But if you tell me that there is no alpha and we are not going to have any active management, I think 2 things please keep in mind. First, whenever somebody talks to you about passive products and they start quoting you examples from America, tell them to please shut up. The reason is because our country is not America. We have no such connection in terms of how our market is developing and how their US market has developed. I'll just give you one statistic for it. Do you know that in the last 25 years, so why is it that in America, everybody says that money has moved to passives? The first thing you should keep in mind, by the way, the data clearly shows that more money has moved to alternates and solution-based products. Money has not moved from active only to passives. More money has moved from active to solution-based products and to alternate products. So what is the difference? Let me explain you in simple words. Financial services industry is very, very smart at marketing. So let us say if I tell you, many years back I was selling a Coke or a Pepsi or a Thumbs Up to you, okay? Now after a few years I come and tell you, you know, you are a layman, you are an investor, I tell you, sir, all these aerated drinks are not good for you. You please drink only soda. This concentrate has too much sugar. Just please drink only soda is good for you. And then I go to all the sophisticated investors and tell them, "Arey boss, why are you having this? I'll sell you concentrate separately." You understand the difference? So what is happening? Retail investors are being told that there is no alpha, please go to passive. And high net worth investors are being told, oh, there is a lot of alpha, why not? You go to private equity and you go to alternate products and all these kind of things. So that is what has happened actually in the US. Now you see the statistics, see the data. In last 25 years in the US, the number of listed companies has become half and the market cap has gone up 3x. What does it mean? You tell me, if market cap goes up 3x and number of listed companies becomes half, what will it do to the public managers? It is shrinking the play field for the public equity managers. And where is all the money going? Maximum amount of money. You can see in US, the number of micro cap, small cap and mid cap companies is actually declining. The number of buyout funds, takeout funds and SPACs is rising. The amount of institutional money going into private equity, crossover and pre-IPO is actually rising. In India, this industry is barely 5-10 years old. In US, the alternate industry is 40 years old. So if somebody tells you that yes, what has happened in US will happen in India after 20 years, I agree. But if somebody tries to tell you that currently there is no alpha in US, first of all, that is wrong. The alpha has gone to the private market. And secondly, if somebody tells you that today India is becoming like US, it is complete, I mean, you know, they need to really check data. So I think these things are being missed out. So don't start assuming that there is no alpha going to be produced, right? And why I'm saying that there is a lot of scope for alpha in India? Because if you take global comparisons, India is the most diverse market in the world. I showed you data which says that US has some 3,300, 3,400 listed companies. Do you know how many listed companies are there in India? More than 7,000. In US, when people want to generate alpha, they are buying Mr. Elon Musk's companies. In India, Campus Activewear is getting listed. Please understand the difference. Do not worry about index capturing the market before market captures the economy itself. We have a very, very long way to go. But of course, you can question that, you know, okay, all this you are saying, but 2018-19 is when the alpha went out completely. And, you know, a lot of funds have been struggling to generate alpha. Please understand one thing, forget 2018-19. In 2002 also we were struggling to generate alpha. And this is nothing to do with what is happening in the Western world. The reality is that in 2018-19 our GDP growth was 3.7%. In 2019-20 it was negative 7.5%. And this year we have crossed pre-COVID level in terms of our GDP. So it is common sense that when economic growth shrinks, corporate performance will shrink. And when corporate performance shrinks, index performance becomes very narrow. In 2018 and 19, just those 2 calendar years, 80% of all small cap stocks gave negative return, 60% of all mid cap stocks gave negative return, half the Nifty stocks gave negative return, but Nifty gave a positive return. This is what happened in 2018-19. This year, by the way, you know Nifty is making new highs. Do you know when Nifty has made new highs, Nifty 500, Nifty mid cap, Nifty small cap, everything is negative. The new highs are only with 2 or 3 sectors, oil, metal, commodity. And the guys who are doing very, very well this year, they were doing disastrously bad in the last 6 to 7 years. So it is just rotation. Now somebody can ask that in 2018-19, if index performance became narrow, what stopped you from buying those stocks? It's very good in hindsight, but a 15 lakh crore industry cannot move all the money to 3 or 4 stocks. You can start outperforming from a particular point in time when you deploy fresh money. But if you have money deployed and then the economic growth becomes negative, you cannot suddenly turn all your portfolios. So I think you just have to see through this phase. Once our economic performance normalizes, when we get back to 5, 6, 7% GDP growth, by the way, in India, negative GDP growth was first time after independence. 3.5% GDP growth was also because of structural changes. So just because last 2 years have been disturbing, let's not start extrapolating and start listening to messaging saying, oh, we are becoming like America. There is no connection. Everybody needs to be very, very data focused, and everybody needs to contextualize what exactly is happening. So I think there are challenges which definitely you must overcome. I have shared all this, so I'm skipping these slides. There are challenges which you must overcome. But the most important thing is to stay focused on your business and devise your product offering as per the customer segment. If your customers look, if you have arranged your customers like this, you cannot devise a product offering. But you need to segment your customers, you need to know what is relevant for whom, and then make the appropriate product offering. So you're in the right place at the right time, but just do the right things and you will all be winners. Thank you very much for listening me out. It's my pleasure.